Welcome to Fight City NYC. Check us out on the web at fightcitynyc.com and friend us on Facebook. My name is Ben Chan, and the guy that I'm usually here with, Aris Pina, we work for CopyBox. We do the Punch Zone for HBO. We're the sexiest statisticians in boxing. Now, Aris can't join us tonight because he's out there hustling. Aris, make that money. We'll see you next week. Now, we've got a lot to talk about. This past weekend, September 17th, Mexican Independence Day, Mayweather versus Ortiz. We're not going to go to the main event right off the bat. We're going to talk about some of the undercard fights, which were very eventful. So first up, we have Jessie Vargas versus Joselito Lopez. This fight was a battle between two young guys. Vargas was coming into the fight at 17-0. Lopez was the opponent, came in at 29-3. The fight was a spirited effort. It was back and forth. In the end, I think it was Vargas's body shots that broke down Lopez, who later on suffered for some stretches of inactivity during the end of the fight. Vargas came on, won a split decision. He's actually trained by the same guy who trains Money Mayweather, the guy in the main event, Roger Mayweather. This was a good fight for both these fighters, because they came in, not a lot was expected, I don't think, because the general public doesn't know who these guys are, but they put on a spirited effort and they made a name for themselves. I would love to see both these guys back, but Vargas is the guy who took the split decision, and we'll definitely see him again down the road. This fight was fought at I think a catch weight of 140.5, which is just above the junior welterweight level. So we'll see what happens with these guys. They're both really good young guys. Let's see what's next for them. Now, the other undercard fight was legendary. Eric El Terrible Morales versus the young opponent, Pablo Cesar Cano. And Cano is all of 21 years old, but he's got more than 20 fights on his ledger, which definitely means he's been fighting in Mexico, he's been fighting other guys, and at the beginning of the fight, frankly, Eric Morales didn't look that good. He was very soft around the middle. And for a guy who's been through so many wars, been in the ring with Burr, been in the ring with Pacquiao, gave Pacquiao the last defeat on his ledger, he was a guy that just looked like a shell of himself. But later on, he got into the fight. It was a really fascinating fight because there was a lot of action. First, it was the young guy imposing his will as the younger guy having a lot more energy. And then later on, it was the veteran, Morales, getting in there, using his uppercuts, using those punches to get to the young guy, and then that's when the cut happened. It happened in the 10th round. As you can see, this is very bloody. Why don't you zoom in and show the viewers? His face was a mess. Now to be fair, both fighters were cut. Morales was cut first, I think, and Cano, you could see that was just this nasty gash, and it was pretty nasty cut. Now, what ended up happening is the ref brought Cano over to the doctor and asked, do you want to continue? Is he okay to continue? The doctor wipes off the blood and says, yeah, he's okay. And they keep on fighting, and they get into the round ends at the end of round 10. Cano's corner said no more, and rightfully so, because this is a really bad cut. So Eric Morales now becomes the first 4-division champion ever from Mexico. Now, say what you want about the legitimacy of this title. This was a battle for the junior welterweight title, the WBC title. You know, it's not like he fought Timothy Bradley. It's not even like he fought Devon Alexander. He did fight Marcos Maidana, but not for the title. And he didn't fight the original opponent, which everybody was looking for, Lucas Matisse. So it seemed like the WBC was just looking for an excuse to give him a belt. Say what you will about that, but sanctioning company or no sanctioning company, Eric Morales is a champion. This was a tough fight for him. He gutted it through, and honestly, he deserves all the credit for beating a young guy who's 21 years old, has some skill, and you know, this wasn't vintage Eric Morales, but this was a very fun Eric Morales to watch. He said that he's not retiring. We'll see what's up next for him. Now, to a fight that actually wasn't on the undercard. This was actually a co-main event, and it didn't happen at the MGM Grand like the other with the first two fights. This happened at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. We had Canelo Alvarez, the young rising star, versus Alfonso Gomez, the guy who won the Contender the first season. Now, Alvarez was expected to come in and blow out Gomez. And what happened wasn't exactly following the script. Now, we had Alvarez come in, and clearly he was in shape, and clearly he was ready to fight. But then something weird happened where he seemed to be working on things during the fight. He didn't jab as much as we're used to Alvarez jabbing, and he fought differently. He kind of looked like he was incorporating the shoulder roll, something that Floyd Mayweather Jr. uses a lot. It seemed like he was testing stuff out, and to be quite frank, that seems a bit disrespectful to a guy like Alfonso Gomez, who might not be a world-class fighter, but is a guy who's been in the ring with some veterans. So Gomez did what a veteran would do. He took advantage of Alvarez's awkwardness, of his not being used to fighting in these styles, not being used to not throwing a lot of jabs, not used to doing the shoulder roll. Gomez took advantage of that. And I think he actually won a few rounds in the middle of the fight after starting off slowly, after actually getting knocked down in the first round. He got up and he fought back and he fought his way back into the fight. Some people had him leading up to the point it was stopped, which was in the 6th round. Now, this was a very, very controversial stoppage because Gomez was against the rope. Alvarez was coming on, had landed some hard shots. Gomez was covering up and protecting himself, but it didn't look like he was out of it. It didn't look like he wasn't fighting back. It just looked like he got caught, he was stunned a little bit, he was protecting himself, and the ref stopped it. Now, some people would argue that Gomez could have fought back, that Gomez is a guy who's taken more punishment in the past. He's been in the ring with Cotto and taken a lot of punishment. So, you know, say what you will. I think this was an interesting fight for both guys. Alvarez might have been on his way to winning the fight, probably was on his way to winning the fight, and it showed, you know, this is a talented guy. He could do a lot of different things in the ring, and he's adding more to his repertoire. Now, Gomez acquitted himself pretty well. He was supposed to get run over in this fight. He was supposed to get steamrolled, but he fought well, and we'll see what happens next with Gomez and for Alvarez. Hopefully Alvarez steps it up in competition. Hopefully he incorporates these things in the next fights that we see, and hopefully Gomez is back in the ring versus another guy, and that he performs well. Now it's time to talk about the main event of the night. Mayweather versus Ortiz. In terms of a fight, before everything happened in the 4th round, before everything broke down, it wasn't much of a fight. Quite frankly, you had Mayweather, you had Ortiz, you had Mayweather showing why he's in a different class than Ortiz. He totally outclassed Ortiz. Every time Ortiz looked very, very unsure of himself. He was bouncing up and down. There were some points when he was resorting to the bouncing up and down, and whenever he stopped bouncing, Mayweather knew, oh, this guy's gonna throw, so he timed it and would hit him. Mayweather was able to pick up Ortiz in so many different points in the fight, and it just didn't look like Ortiz was in the same class as Mayweather. Ortiz had some good moments. He was able to bully Mayweather a couple of times, but he just wasn't landing as many blows as we're used to seeing him land against lesser fighters. This didn't look like the guy who fought Andre Berto at his first fight at welterweight earlier this year. And then the 4th round happened. The headbutt. Now, this was an act of desperation. This was the act of a young fighter who just didn't have any answers left, of a fighter who's frustrated. And since the footage hasn't been replayed on HBO yet, we can't show you what happened, but we can reenact what happened. So I'm gonna need some assistance here. So my cameraman Brian Acosta is gonna come, and we're gonna show you exactly what happened in that round. So first, I'm gonna be playing, there we go. I'm gonna be playing Victor Ortiz. My man here, Brian, say hi to the audience.
Hey.
He's our high school intern, cameraman. He's gonna be playing Money Mayweather, okay? So, Mayweather's got that kind of stance where he's giving him the side. Ortiz actually did some okay work in the round. He landed some blows. He was able to get some blows in, but most of the blows were just being blocked or going over, right? And he gets Mayweather into the corner, right? Can't hit him, right? And what does he do? He does the headbutt, okay? So, boom, right into Mayweather's chin. actually cut his lip, okay? So the ref, Jose Cortez, sees this, right? And starts pulling the boy, but not before Victor Ortiz decides that it's time to kiss and make up. So he does the hug. I'm really sorry. As they're walking away, they do the touching gloves thing, initiated by Victor Ortiz, right? And Mayweather goes into the corner, goes into his neutral corner like he's supposed to. Cortez gives Ortiz a dressing down. Don't do this. What are you doing? Takes his hand, turns him around 1 point, like he's supposed to deduct a point for intentional headbutting, right? And then brings him back into the middle of the ring, and Cortez says, let's go, okay? At this point, Ortiz isn't finished apologizing, so he decides, okay, let's touch gloves, which Mayweather does, right? But he's still in that fighting stance, okay? And then, Ortiz goes for the bro hug. Goes to hug Mayweather, who doesn't reciprocate, right? And as Ortiz is pulling out, Mayweather throws that left hook. Boom! And Ortiz looks at Cortez, and as Ortiz is looking at Cortez, who's actually not paying attention at this point, Mayweather winds up, throws that right hand. Cortez turns around just in time to see Ortiz on the floor, and he counts him out, okay? Now, all this time, right? Let's rewind a little bit. Let's go back to the left hook. So now I'm gonna play Cortez. He brought the fighters back together and said, let's go, and then he turned to look at the timekeeper, I believe to see to check if the 10-second countdown had been initiated. So when Mayweather throws that left hook, Cortez isn't paying attention. He's looking down there. And Ortiz is maybe looking at Cortez, right? And so it wasn't until after Mayweather threw that right hand, right, that Cortez looks up just in time to see Ortiz being laid out and initiates the 10 count. Thanks a lot. Now, there's been a lot of debate on whose fault it is, on who deserves the blame. You know, honestly, this is Ortiz's fault. The maxim in boxing is always protect yourself. Protect yourself at all times. And in this case, Cortez did say clearly, let's go, which means it's time to fight, time in. And Ortiz got caught, first he got caught being a dirty fighter with the headbutt, then he got caught being a stupid fighter because he was paying attention to Cortez instead of paying attention to the guy who was trying to punch his face in, okay? So this really falls on Ortiz's shoulders, all of this. But, well, maybe not all of it. Mayweather does deserve, you know, at best it's a gray area. At best, he was a guy who was reciprocating for having received an illegal headbutt. At worst, he's the guy who took advantage of a fighter who wasn't paying attention and did kind of an unsportsmanlike move. And, you know, if you want to think about in the Pacquiao versus Mosley fight, when Mosley was reaching out to doing those, hey, let's high five, you know, at any of those points, Pacquiao could have just unleashed a huge punch, and he didn't. What Mayweather did was legal, but maybe it wasn't so sportsmanlike, okay? Now, Cortez deserves some of the blame too. He's the guy, he's a legend. He was just inducted in the Hall of Fame. He's famous for being fair but firm. You know, these days, he's not so firm. And it wasn't so clear to Ortiz maybe that the fight had been restarted. And quite frankly, at the point that Ortiz got knocked out, he wasn't paying attention. And that's really dangerous. It didn't have any impact on this fight, I don't think. Ortiz will tell you, oh, I wasn't sure. But I think if you watch the replay, you'll hear that Cortez did say let's go, and to most people to most fighters, that should mean time in. And the fact that you're standing in front of a guy who's trying to knock your head off means that you should be protecting yourself, okay? So there's been a lot of talk about you know, maybe Ortiz getting a rematch. Quite frankly, I don't think Ortiz deserves a rematch. He was getting outclassed up to the point that the fight was stopped. I think that Ortiz getting knocked out was inevitable. I think it was going to happen. Either he was going to get knocked out or he was going to lose a wide decision. Ortiz didn't have any answers. That's why he did the headbutt in the first place. Now people are saying, oh, we should rematch, and maybe Mayweather will fight Victor Ortiz again on Cinco de Mayo, because he loves fighting on Cinco de Mayo, because that would be a big event. But honestly, I don't think there's anything there. I would pick Mayweather. I think Ortiz would be an even bigger underdog in the next fight. I don't see why this fight needs to happen. I think the fight that everybody wants to see now is Pacquiao versus Mayweather. Unfortunately, in my opinion, that fight will never happen. And it will never happen because you have two guys, you have two massive egos, and they're never going to want to do business with each other. They're never going to want, no guys want to get, they're going to be fighting over millions. And it's not going to happen, okay? So, before we end, I want to announce one other fight that I'm actually really excited about. Cotto versus Margarito 2. Now that fight was just announced. It's just been signed. They're going to be fighting on December 3rd at Madison Square Garden. This is going to be a fight, okay? In the first fight in 2008, Cotto came out and he just put on a boxing clinic, and he boxed the crap out of Margarito, and then he got tired. He was boxing going backwards all night, and eventually he got tired, and Margarito came on and eventually TKO'd Cotto. Now, Cotto has said afterwards, and afterwards Margarito got caught with the plaster and the gloves in the Mosley fight. Cotto has insinuated that, or not insinuated, but said, I think Margarito was cheating. Maybe Margarito was cheating, but if Margarito was cheating, whatever he had in his gloves didn't help him absorb whatever Cotto was doing to his face. And make no mistake, those blows were having an effect on Margarito. It just so happens that Margarito was able to finish Cotto off before Cotto was able to do any real damage to Margarito. And after the fight, Margarito's face let you know that those blows that Cotto was putting on Margarito really hurt him. So, they're going to fight again at Madison Square Garden. This is going to be a crazy fight. I'll tell you right now, I was in the Garden for Cotto versus Zab Judah. New York City, you have all these Puerto Rican fight fans. They're really, really great fans. It's kind of almost like a soccer-like atmosphere. So you have Miguel Cotto with all these Puerto Rican fans. You're going to have Antonio Margarito, who's still loved by a lot of Mexican fans. This is going to be a fight that you want to be inside Madison Square Garden to catch. Okay? It's going to happen on December 3rd, so it's going to be on HBO pay-per-view, but really, if you're in New York City, Madison Square Garden is going to be the place to be that night. All right, that's all we have for this week in terms of boxing. We're going to do MMA next, but thanks for watching Fight City NYC.